They say some things should stay hidden in the dark. They tell you legends aren't real. In today's story, we explore that legend. Sarah didn't listen. She went to the old Ashfield mill chasing a ghost story, the legend of the Shadow Man. They said it only appeared on camera. Just a trick of the light, right? That's what Sarah thought too. Until the photos got clearer. Until the cold wasn't just cold. Until clicking the shutter felt like feeding something ancient, something hungry. Her camera opened a door, and what came through wasn't just a ghost. This is a story of how her obsession became a nightmare she couldn't escape. And if you like these kind of explorations into the unknown, and want to support the telling of these chilling tales, please take a moment to hit that like button, and subscribe to the channel for more tales from the shadows, and let me know what you think in the comments. Now let's step back into Sarah's first encounter. Chapter 1, Whispers of the Shadow Man. The air hung heavy with the scent of damp earth and decaying wood as I approached the abandoned mill. Against the bruised purple sky, it loomed, a skeletal silhouette in the fading light of a late October afternoon. The legend of the Shadow Man had always been a whispered rumor in Ashfield, a spooky story to scare younger kids, but I, Sarah, a 16-year-old with a camera and a burgeoning skepticism, was determined to see for myself. My friends thought I was crazy. It's just an old wives' tale, Sarah, Olivia had scoffed, rolling her eyes with practiced disbelief. Some blurry photos, a bit of creative editing, that's all it is. Emma, ever the pragmatist, had simply sighed, advising me to focus on my upcoming calculus test instead of chasing phantoms. But the whispers intrigued me, the idea of a ghost primarily visible through a lens. It was the perfect blend of the eerie and the almost scientifically testable, a paradox that resonated deep within my photography-obsessed brain. I'd spent the last week scouring the internet for mentions of the Shadow Man. The accounts were scant. Grainy photos on obscure forums, vague mentions on local history blogs. Some showed indistinct shapes lurking in the background, others just unsettling atmospheres easily dismissed as camera glitches or tricks of the light. Yet the consistencies of the location. This specific mill, perched on the edge of town, half hidden by overgrown blackberry bushes and choked by ivy, gave the scattering tales a disturbing weight. The mill itself was a monument to decay. Its brick facade crumbled, stained with weeping marks of time and weather. Broken windows gaped like empty sockets, and the rusted metal roof sagged. A nervous energy, more than excitement, pulsed through me as I gripped my trusty Canon. This wasn't just another photo shoot. It was an expedition into the heart of a local legend. I started with the exterior, capturing the desolate beauty of the crumbling structure against the encroaching night. Each click of the shutter felt significant, a small act of defiance against the unease prickling at the edge of my focus. As the sun dipped lower, casting long, grasping shadows across the ground, I pushed open the groaning front door and ventured inside. The flashlight beam sliced through the murk, revealing drifts of debris and the ghostly outlines of inert machinery. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of dust and mildew, the silence profound, broken only by the scuttling of unseen things and the occasional groan of settling timbers. Sunlight struggled to penetrate the gloom, painting the interior in streaks of fading gold that only emphasized the deep shadows pooling in the corners. It was the kind of place where darkness could easily become something more. The temperature dropped noticeably, a distinct chill that had little to do with the October air outside. A strange tingling, like static electricity, raised the hairs on my arms. It wasn't just isolation, it felt like observation. My first few indoor shots were unremarkable studies of decay, but as I reviewed them on the camera's small screen, my breath caught. In one photo taken near a massive collapse in the interior wall, something was wrong. A faint distortion lingering in the background, a vague, amorphous shape, barely discerning against the dark wall, yet undeniably present. My heart thumped against my ribs. Just a trick of the light, I told myself, a smudge on the sensor. But the feeling of being watched intensified. The tingling sensation bloomed into a full-body shiver. The next hour became a tense exercise in documentation. I moved through the space, shooting methodically, trying to replicate the anomaly, trying to debunk it. With each press of the shutter, I checked the screen. The distortion reappeared, subtly shifting positions. It wasn't just a smudge anymore. It became a coalesce, hinting at a tall, gaunt silhouette that seemed to draw nearer with each photograph. The images weren't sharp enough for details, but the cumulative effect was deeply unsettling. It felt like it was closing in. I checked my settings, cleaned the lens, tried different angles. The shapes persisted, a silent partner in every frame. The unease that had prickled at me earlier began to transform, solidifying into a cold knot of dread in my stomach. That night, sleep was shallow and fraught. Fragmented images of the mill, or shifting darkness, flickered behind my eyelids. During the day, concentration became difficult. Calculus problems seemed abstract, distant. My grades, usually stellar, began to waver. My friends noticed the change. Olivia's amusement faded, replaced by knitted brows. Emma's pragmatic advice now carried genuine concern. They saw the fatigue shadowing my eyes, the slight, persistent tremor in my hands. Their worry couldn't penetrate the anxieties now woven into my thoughts. The shadow wasn't just in my photos anymore. It felt like it had followed me home, an invisible weight pressing down. Rationality screaming at me to stop, delete the photos, forget the mill. But the photographer in me, the part drawn to the inexplicable, couldn't let go. The compulsion to capture the truth, whatever it was, outweighed my fear. The Shadow Man legend had snagged my curiosity. Now, something deeper felt hooked. My next trip to the mill wouldn't just be an investigation. It felt like it had to be a confrontation. Chapter 2: Deeper Shadows. My second visit to the Ashfield Mill felt different. Less nervous energy, more grim purpose. This time my focus wasn't just visual proof, but capturing the environment itself. The flashlight beam danced across rough-hewn timbers and peeling paint. The silence inside was thick, punctuated by an irregular dripping sound somewhere deep within. Beyond the expected creaks, the low, almost imperceptible hum I'd noticed before vibrated through the floorboards, a sub-audible thrum my audio recorder picked up earlier. I held it aloft, sweeping it around, trying to pinpoint the source. I moved deeper, navigating past skeletal remains of machinery. Pulling out the digital thermometer, I documented the ambient temperature, then watched the numbers plummet as I stepped into a distinct pocket of near-freezing air near the collapsed wall. My breath plumed. It felt unnatural, localized. The recorder captured a strange static hiss in this zone. The sensation of being watched returned, sharper, a focused pressure at the base of my skull. I resisted the urge to constantly scan the shadows. I instead concentrated on taking methodical readings and sound recordings. I did take some photos, mostly documenting the areas where the temperatures dropped or the hum intensified. Back home, reviewing the data felt chillingly concrete. Clear temperature anomalies, the persistent hum localized near the collapse, the odd static. The photos initially seemed secondary, then one stopped me. Taken near the crumbling staircase where the cold was most intense, a darkness pooled at the edge of the frame. It wasn't just shadow, it possessed a subtle texture. A depth that seemed wrong, almost like a tear in the image. It was faint, easily missed if I hadn't been looking, but seeing it correlated with the environmental data sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. This wasn't just my eye playing tricks. In the following days, the unease intensified. Concentration became a battle, the memory of the cold spot and the recorded hum intruding. Sleep offered little escape. Disturbed by fragmented dreams of being lost in the mill's dark passages, pursued by something felt but unseen. My friends noticed my worsening state. Olivia tried to reason with me, suggesting faulty equipment or natural phenomena. Emma, seeing the genuine fear, urged me to consider environmental factors, worried about mold or toxins affecting my perception. Their concern felt distant. This wasn't just stress or bad air. It felt like an intrusion, documented now not just visually, but audibly, and thermally. The compulsion to return grew. It wasn't just about the legend. It was about understanding this presence leaving traces across multiple spectra. Chapter 3: Provocation. Driven by the need for undeniable evidence and a growing reckless frustration, my third trip to the mill shifted from observation to experimentation. If this thing reacted to being photographed, could it be provoked further? It felt dangerous, stupid even, but the alternative, passive waiting, felt worse. I returned with a different camera, an audio recorder, thermometer, and a powerful external flash unit. Even approaching the building, the air felt changed, the static hum more pronounced. Inside, the familiar silence felt tense, expectant. The wind outside howled, twisting as it entered the mill, echoing mournfully. I started near the crumbling staircase, setting up the recorder and thermometer. Then, aiming the camera into the darkest corners. I began firing the external flash repeatedly, the intense bursts momentarily blinding me, starkly illuminating the decay. The reaction was immediate. The low hum spiked, captured clearly by the recorder, becoming an almost painful bass note that vibrated through my bones. The temperature, steady moments before, plunged several degrees within seconds. A prickling sensation, sharp as needles, erupted across my skin. Then came the photos. Reviewing them on the spot, the shadow was present, but it wasn't just clearer, it looked agitated. In the flashlit shots, its form seemed to momentarily boil, edges sharpening violently before receding as the flash died. It wasn't just getting closer, it was responding to the intrusion of the light and energy. In one shot, aimed towards the high window, the 2 points of absolute blackness I'd glimpsed before seemed to flare, like pupils dilating in the sudden light. Raw fear, colder and sharper than before, seized me. This wasn't passive lurking, this was active response. It knew I was provoking it. The cold deepened, leeching warmth, a chilling embrace that felt less intimate now and more actively hostile. The mill seemed to groan around me, shadows writhing, the air heavy. The resonant hum pulsed, a physical pressure making retreat feel difficult. Danger radiated from the space the shadow occupied in the photos. That night, the evidence felt less like discovery and more like confirmation of hostile contact. Each image showed the shadow's volatile reaction, though none captured the terrifying proximity of the photos lost on the dead camera. The final shot from this trip showed it intensely present, an abyss of agitated darkness, its inhuman shape radiating active malice. The subsequent days were a fog of heightened anxiety. My schoolwork suffered. Olivia and Emma's pleas grew more desperate. I knew with chilling certainty this was more than a legend. It was ancient, reactive, and crossing the boundary. The dread shifted from being hunted to having poked something ancient and predatory with a stick. Chapter 4: Seeking Answers. The memory of the shadow in the final, lost photograph, the one trapped in my dead camera, and possibly close, became a phantom presence haunting my waking hours. Sleep offered no respite, only fractured relays of the mill and the gaunt figure, its obscure eyes seeming to pierce the veil of my subconscious. Driven by a need bordering on desperation, I turned from capturing images to capturing information. There had to be more buried underneath the folklore. Dusty town records and microfiche newspapers in the Ashfield Library offered little beyond the mill's industrial past. Following advice to seek stories beyond official records, I visited Mrs. Gable, near the edge of town. She spoke of the mill's history, then lowered her voice, mentioning a long-ago accident where workers died. "They said," she murmured, leaning closer, "some souls get tangled up. Their pain can feed the darkness." She framed the Shadow Man as a boogeyman tale, yet her unease felt genuine as she recalled whispers of cold spots and pervasive dread near the site. Seeking a counterpoint, I visited Mr. Henderson, the retired history teacher. He confirmed the fatal accidents Mrs. Gable mentioned with start dates and numbers, but waved away the Shadow Man legend with academic disdain. Folklore, he stated firmly. Psychological projection onto the inherently eerie location. People see patterns where none exist. Their contradictory accounts, chilling anecdotes versus rational dismissal, left me more unsettled than before. Neither folklore nor psychology explained the disturbing progressions I saw in my own photographs, the ones I still possessed. They showed the figure evolving, sharpening, undeniably present, responding to my presence in the mill, and neither explanation lessened the horrifying clarity of the image trapped on my dead camera. My focus frayed. Sleep deprivation left shadows beneath my eyes. Olivia and Emma's pleas for me to talk to someone, convinced I was breaking down, felt distant. How could I explain the terrifying conviction that the entity was responding to my investigation, growing bolder as I sought answers? It felt like a horrifying feedback loop. The more I searched for the truth, the closer the shadows seemed to loom, feeding on my attention. My sanity felt stretched thin between the logical world and the horrifying reality documented on my laptop, a reality underscored by the chilling memory I couldn't access, but could never forget. Chapter 5: The Unseen Persistence. Scrutinizing the saved photos became an obsession. The shadow's chilling progression was undeniable to me. but showing them again proved futile. Olivia gently suggested pareidolia. Emma admitted that the images were unsettling but couldn't see the definitive evolving figure I described, and my parents dismissed my withdrawn behavior as teenage angst. Their inability to see what felt so horrifyingly clear deepened my sense of isolation, leaving me utterly alone with the chilling evidence on my screen and the searing memory of the lost, closer image. Analyzing the photos felt like self-torture. The shadow seemed almost aware, its subtle shifts between shots like a defiant response to my scrutiny. A morbid compulsion grew. I needed an image no one could dismiss. Returning to the Ashfield mill, the air felt heavy, stagnant, the silent humming with an unsettling undercurrent. I set up the replacement camera, the one whose predecessor held the lost proof, on a tripod near the collapsed wall, the epicenter of the activity. Reviewing the first shots on the small screen, a creeping apprehension turned my blood cold. Shadows in digital previews seemed to subtly writhe before settling. Each subsequent photograph documented a horrifying transformation. The shadow wasn't just getting clearer, it was gaining substance, inflating from two-dimensional darkness into the tall, gaunt, humanoid shape, its edges fraying as if shedding particles of darkness. With each click it advanced, not just moving closer with the scene, but appearing to push towards the lens itself, its ominous aura radiating from the screen. Then came the shot that broke me. The shadow dominated the frame, obscuring much of the mill's interior. It was impossibly close, pressing against the perspective, its darkness so absolute it seemed to absorb the light around it. It wasn't just an outline, it was a void, and from its center, I could almost feel an icy breath fogging the lens. The image was so viscerally terrifying, so undeniably real on the small screen that I stumbled backwards. A choked cry escaped me as the camera tumbled from the tripod, hitting the debris-strewn floor with a sickening crack. I didn't check if it was broken. I ran, heart hammering, senses overloaded. The image burned into my mind's eye. The chilling evidence was undeniable. Even if this new ultimate image might now also be damaged or lost, the shadow wasn't just a legend, it was real. It was evolving, and it felt like it was coming for me. The following days blurred into suffocating apprehension. Sleep offered no escape from the shadow's final, imposing form. Its presence became insidious, weaving itself into the fabric of my perception. Trying to delete the earlier photos from my laptop felt futile. The entity wasn't confined to pixels anymore. It was a force, growing stronger, its darkness relentless. It wasn't just haunting me, it felt like it was actively hunting me. The game had intensified, and I knew, with dreadful certainty, that I was losing. Chapter 6. Desperate Measures. The gnawing fear, the certainty I was losing this terrifying game, propelled me back towards the Ashfield mill. It wasn't rational, it was an act born of desperation. I needed undeniable proof, not just for the others, but for my own fragmented sanity. This felt like the last chance. Arriving at dusk, the air itself felt thick, humming with palpable tension. This time, I brought multiple cameras. My primary DSLR, a point and shoot, even an old Polaroid determined to capture the entity definitively. Experimenting with different techniques born from frantic research. The first shots, taken as darkness consumed the landscape, were already unsettling. The shadows were there in the frame, sharper, more defined than before, seeming to reach like grasping claws. Disturbingly aware, inside the air thick with decay, bursts of flash seemed to provoke the entity. Its form pulsed, darkness deepening, appearing more substantial. A profound cold radiated from where it manifested in the photos, a chill confirmed by the instantly developed Polaroid prints which felt unnaturally cold to the touch. Switching the DSLR to its night vision setting transformed the mill into an alien landscape. Here, the shadow was terrifyingly distinct, a void, an absolute absence of heat and light that seemed to ripple at the edges. Swallowing the infrared spectrum, primal fear washed over me. Hours passed in a blur of frantic activity, changing angles, adjusting settings, driven by the desperate need to validate my own experience against the disbelief and doubt. But with each successful capture, the shadow seemed to intensify, its advance relentless, as if feeding on my frantic energy, documenting my own descent. As the first hint of dawn began to bleach the eastern sky, casting a pale, eerie light across the desolate scene, I took one final photograph, a wide-angle panoramic shot with the DSLR, capturing the entire sweep of the mill's decaying facade. Reviewing it on the screen, my breath seized. There, dominating the center of the frame, stood the Shadow Man, impossibly tall, starkly defined against the gloom, dwarfing the crumbling structure. Its features remained obscure, shrouded in darkness, yet its presence was overwhelming. Its chilling power radiated from the image. This time, there was no thrill of discovery, just a deep, cold certainty. It was real, it was powerful, and it knew I was there. I had the proof, but the victory felt hollow, terrifyingly empty. Exhaustion and fear crashed over me. The camera slipped from my numb fingers, clattering onto the damp earth. The last photograph remained on the screen. A horrifying moment burned into my memory as I stumbled away, fleeing the rising sun, the chill of the mill, or the shadow itself, seeming to permeate my very being. Chapter 7: The Gateway Photograph. Days bled together after I fled the mill, each moment underscored by the mental image of the final panoramic shot. The Shadow Man, impossibly tall, dominating the frame. The gnawing anxiety became unbearable. I had to retrieve the camera, confront the digital evidence, prove it wasn't just a hallucination. Returning to the mill required summoning reserves of courage I didn't know I possessed. My steps hesitant through the oppressive stillness. I found the DSLR near the foundation, coated in dampness, the memory card still secure inside. Back in my room, trembling hands inserted the card. Files loaded, the dusk shots, the flash-lit interiors. The shadow evolved steadily, more potent with every picture. And then, the final image filled the screen. It silenced my frantic heartbeat with a sickening lurch. The panoramic view captured the mill in eerie pre-dawn light, but the Shadow Man stood colossal at its center, dwarfing the structure, its scale impossible, its presence an overwhelming force pushing outward from the screen. The image quality was terrifyingly sharp, though features remained obscure within its absolute darkness. The sheer weight and definition conveyed pure, ancient malice. It wasn't just in the photo, it was the photo, its essence bound to the pixels. The edges vibrating subtly, I stared, mesmerized and horrified, a chill deeper than any physical cold seeping into my bones. Then, it shifted. A violent flicker distorted the image, the Shadow Man's form seeming to liquefy as pixels struggled. A tendril of pure blackness snaked out of the bottom edge of the digital image, stretching towards the physical bezel of my laptop. I stared, frozen, as it crept further, spreading like ink, reaching for the air of my room. A wave of unnatural cold rolled outwards, carrying the phantom scent of damp earth and decay. The tendril thickness, pushing against the screen's surface, which seemed to ripple, warping the image behind it. The boundary dissolved. The Shadow Man began to pour out, not smoothly, but in violent, shuddering bursts of shadow and cold. Inky blackness coalesced near the laptop, pressing into the physical space of my room. Displacing the lamplight, its shape solidified rapidly. Impossibly large, blocking the light from my window, casting the room into deep, ominous shadow. It wasn't an emergence. It was an invasion. Panic clawed at my throat. I scrambled backwards, tripping as the entity's presence became the room itself. A terrifying omnipresence consuming everything. The darkness pressed in, thick with malevolent energy. I felt it, a touch like ice and static, sinking directly into bone. My vision blurred. Sounds faded in a dull roar beneath the crushing weight. Then, only darkness. Chapter 8: The Lingering Stain. I awoke hours later on the floor, trembling violently, clothes damp with cold sweat, the scent of decay heavy in the air. My laptop screen was blank, the gateway photograph gone. My phone too was dead, unresponsive. The entity hadn't just invaded, it had selectively erased the most potent digital traces, leaving only the earlier, less definitive photos. My room looked superficially untouched, yet fundamentally wrong, tainted with an oppressive weight that remained, a lingering pressure on my chest. It felt as if a fragment of the Shadow Man, a sliver of his essence had remained, tethered somehow to me. The barrier was broken. The following days were a disorienting haze. Explaining the dead tech to my mom yielded only mundane theories of power surges or viruses. The gulf between my horrifying reality and her normal world achingly clear. School was torture. The world seemed subtly warped, colors muted, sounds off-key, concentrating impossible when the memory of the invasion kept replaying. My appetite vanished, I grew thin, gone, catching my reflection once only to see a hollow-eyed stranger. Locked in my room, I avoided mirrors, dreading seeing something else looking back. The entity's unseen presence became a constant state of high alert. Floorboards creaked like footsteps. The rustle of leaves sounded like whispers. Sometimes a phantom scent of decay overwhelmed the mundane. One evening, numbly picking up the replacement camera, I pointed it towards the darkened window pane. For a horrifying microsecond, the viewfinder showed not my reflection, but my face. Distorted. Monstrous. Eyes like embers, impossibly close, peering in. It vanished instantly, replaced by my own terrified face. I dropped the camera. The decay scent suddenly sharpened. A low growl seemed to echo from the corners of the room. Was it real? The uncertainty was its own torture. The glimpse feeling like a deliberate warning. I'm still here. Life became a grayscale existence, perpetually shrouded in dread. Familiar patterns seemed to writhe in my peripheral vision. Shadows seemed too deep, too still. One evening, staring out my window as twilight bled into night, the trees seemed to contort unnervingly. A sudden cold draft swept the room, followed by the distinct paralyzing sensation of being watched, of unseen eyes piercing the darkness outside, focusing intently on me. It intensified rapidly, a physical pressure driving the air from my lungs. I stumbled backwards, collapsed onto my bed, overwhelmed. The entity felt near, watching, waiting. It wasn't over. It felt like only a lull. My life had become a poisoned landscape, haunted by the chilling certainty that the true threat lurked just outside my sight, waiting. Chapter 9. The Parasitic Pattern. While whispers and speculation rippled through Ashfield after my breakdown became visible, turning my trauma into town gossip, my focus narrowed, sharpened by the lingering terror and the oppressive weight that never truly left. My lifeline became Emma, seeing my deterioration firsthand. The haunted eyes, the constant anxiety, had eroded her pragmatism. Dismissing my experience was no longer an option. Genuine investigation was needed. "Okay," she said, resolute amidst the scattering research papers in my room. "Forget the rumors, let's find out what this thing really is." We bypassed the online frenzy and dug into Ashfield Historical Society archives. Hours sifting through brittle clippings and neglected records revealed a startling, disturbing pattern linked to the mill. The unexplained 1923 disappearance of worker Eli Thorne, accompanied by rumors among his colleagues of fleeting shadows. Other sudden vanishings over the decades, police reports detailing terrified accounts of dark figures materializing. The 1988 death of a photographer near the mill, whose undeveloped film contained images strikingly similar to my own captures. Individually, they were oddities. Together, they painted a century-long history of the unexplained dread and loss centered on that location. Our research led us to Mr. Abernathy, one of Ashfield's oldest residents, who'd worked briefly at the mill as a young man. Wary at first, his resistance crumbled as we laid out historical patterns and my own harrowing account. In a hushed, trembling voice, he spoke of things beyond common legends, whispers of ancient rituals to the land itself, of a dark entity bound there. Then, he looked directly at me, his gaze sharp beneath clouded eyes. "Those photographs?" he rasped, clutching the arm of his chair. "It isn't just seen in the pictures. It's drawn to them. The act of capturing its image, it feeds it, focuses it. The more you photograph it, the closer it gets." He recounted fragments about others who try to document the mill's secrets, only to vanish or unravel into madness. His words painted a picture not of a mere ghost, but of something insidious, ancient, and parasitic, existing just outside comprehension, strengthened by the very attention directed towards it. The chilling realization dawned. Our investigation, my photographs, hadn't just uncovered the Shadow Man. We had actively invited it, fed it, amplified its presence in our lives. Chapter 10. Uncertain Victory. The weight of Abernathy's words. Photos feed it. Pressed down on us. Cowering wasn't an option. The entity was relentless. Understanding and confronting the source felt like the only path. Our plan was terrifyingly simple. Return to the mill, armed not with cameras but with knowledge. We wouldn't try to capture its image. We would try to sever its connection. Bathed in pale afternoon light, the mill radiated a deep wrongness. Inside, fighting the urge to flee, we searched methodically, discovering faint symbols etched into stone behind peeling plaster. Near where I'd captured the anomaly, we found a hidden chamber containing strangely carved wooden objects, antique tools coated in something dark, and worn books detailing unsettling rituals. Confirming the mill site predated Ashfield, a place of ancient worship where an entity was bound, requiring periodic focus to maintain its power. The text chillingly suggested photographs now served as that focus, an inadvertent modern sacrifice. We knew disrupting the cycle was our only hope. In the heart of the mill, we built a small fire and fed the artifacts into the flames. As they burned, the air grew colder, shadows deepened, the furious pressure of being watched intensified. As the last object smoldered, a figure condensed from the deepest shadows, dark, vaguely humanoid, radiating palpable fury, yet somehow weaker, less stable than the being that had emerged from my laptop. Adrenaline turned to ice water. We stood our ground, meeting its silent rage not with fear, but with unwavering, shared defiance. The Shadow Man recoiled as if struck, its form flickering violently, unable to maintain its hold against our focused opposition and the severed link to its power source. It retreated, dissolving back into the shadows, leaving only profound silence and the smell of smoke. The oppressive weight lifted. We left the mill as the sun set, shaken but changed. Yet the victory felt fragile, fraying into gnawing unease on the walk home. Had we truly destroyed it, or just disrupted its anchor in Ashfield? Days later, a morbid scroll on an online paranormal forum delivered the answer. A user hundreds of miles away detailed experiences with an identical, shadowy figure tied to an old structure, appearing first in photos, growing clearer, culminating its manifestation. The parallels were exact, down to descriptions echoing the rituals we'd found documented. The discovery hit like a physical blow. The Shadow Man wasn't confined to Ashfield. It was larger, ancient, capable of manifesting in multiple places. We had confronted one manifestation, severed one connection, but the underlying threat remained, vast, pervasive. The feeling of being watched never truly left, a cold certainty it was still out there, perhaps weakened here, but not gone, lurking, waiting. There was no neat resolution, only the terrifying possibility of the unknown, the chilling knowledge that the true threat remained just out of sight. The story hadn't ended, the dread continued. That's the end of the story, guys. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you at the next one. And please hit that like button and comment down below if you like the story.